The crisp autumn wind carried the scent of pumpkin spice and freshly baked goods as I made my way down Main Street, clutching a stack of flyers for the annual Harvest Festival. The town square bustled with activity, and I couldn't help but smile at the familiar faces, setting up booths and decorating the park's gazebo with vibrant fall foliage. "Lila, over here!" My heart sank as I turned to find my sister, Marla, waving me over with a saccharine smile plastered across her perfectly made-up face. Even after a decade, the sight of her still stirred a whirlwind of emotions within me. Anger, resentment, and a lingering sadness that our bond had shattered beyond repair. "Marla," I managed, forcing a tight-lipped smile. "Fancy seeing you here." Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, zeroing in on the flyers in my hands. "Still running that quaint little bookstore of yours, I see." The condescending lilt in her voice was like nails on a chalkboard. "Yes, and it's doing quite well, thank you." Marla let out a derisive laugh, shaking her head. "You always were the hopeless romantic, clinging to those outdated dreams. When are you going to wake up and join the real world, Lila? A successful single woman like you shouldn't be wasting her time on such frivolous pursuits." My knuckles turned white as I gripped the flyers, fighting the urge to hurl them at her smug face. "At least I'm living an authentic life, Marla, instead of the facade you've so carefully constructed." Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You know exactly what I mean," I shot back, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "You've always been jealous of me, ever since we were kids. That's why you did what you did. Stole Evan right from under me, just like you stole everything else that meant something to me." Marla's perfectly sculpted mask slipped, revealing a flash of the ugly, seething envy that lurked beneath. "Don't flatter yourself, Lila. Evan was never yours to begin with. He just realized what a pathetic, delusional loser you are and came to his senses." Her words cut deep, ripping open old wounds that had never truly healed. But this time, something within me shifted. A burning determination ignited in my chest, fueled by a decade's worth of pent-up anger and resentment. "Keep telling yourself that, Marla," I said, my voice low and steady. "But we both know the truth. And one day, everyone else will too." With that, I turned on my heel and strode away, leaving her sputtering behind me. The time for cowering in her shadow was over. This was the start of something new, a reckoning years in the making, where the scales of justice would finally tip in my favor. No more playing the victim. It was time for Marla to face the consequences of her actions. As I stormed away from my encounter with Marla, memories came flooding back like a tidal wave, threatening to drown me in their bitter currents. It started when we were kids, really. Marla was always the favorite, the golden child who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. While I was the shy, bookish one, content to lose myself in the pages of a novel, Marla craved the spotlight, demanding attention with her antics and tantrums. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Mom would chide, her brow furrowed in disappointment whenever I fell short of Marla's lofty standards. Things only escalated as we grew older. In high school, Marla ruled the social scene, her posse of sycophants trailing in her wake. She snatched up the captain's position on the cheerleading squad, as well as the lead role in every school play. "Who would want to watch a play with you as the star, Lila?" she sneered when I dared to audition. "You're about as interesting as a piece of wet cardboard." And then came Evan, the one bright spot in my life, the kindred spirit who saw something in me that no one else did. We met during our freshman year of college and instantly clicked, our shared love of literature, and quiet nights spent reading together forming an unbreakable bond. At least I thought it was unbreakable. "Evan and I are getting married," Marla announced over dinner one night, her perfectly manicured nails gleaming as she flashed her gaudy engagement ring. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as I stared at her, dumbfounded. Evan, my Evan, had proposed to Marla? The pieces started to fall into place, the hushed phone calls, the sudden cancellations of our dates, the distant look in his eyes. "How could you?" I whispered, my voice cracking with the weight of his betrayal. Marla simply shrugged, a cruel smirk twisting her lips. He wanted a real woman, not some mousy little wallflower. Can you blame him? Our parents remained eerily silent, their stunned expressions soon giving way to poorly concealed delight. Finally, their golden child was getting the happily ever after she deserved. That night, as I lay in bed listening to Marla's peals of laughter drifting down the hall, a hard knot of determination took root within me. She might have won this round, but I wouldn't go down without a fight. It was time to turn the tables on my so-called sister. The next morning I confronted Evan, demanding answers. But his words were little more than a slew of excuses and half-truths, each one more pathetic than the last. "I'm sorry, Lila, but your sister, she's just got this fire, this passion that I can't resist." His voice trailed off, his gaze averting from mine as if he couldn't bear to see the devastation etched across my face. In that moment, I knew there was no salvaging our relationship, no coming back from the depths of his deception. Marla had well and truly poisoned the well, her venomous influence seeping into every crevice of what we'd once shared. As I watched Evan slink away, shoulders hunched in defeat, a cold clarity washed over me. If Marla wanted to play dirty, then so be it. This was war, and I wouldn't rest until I emerged victorious, even if it meant razing her precious fairy tale to the ground. I slammed the door behind me, leaning back against the cool wood as I fought to catch my breath. My heart thudded painfully in my chest, the echoes of Evan's feeble excuses still ringing in my ears. A soft knock made me jump, and I whirled around to find Theo standing in the hallway, his brow furrowed in concern. "Lila? Are you all right?" I heard yelling. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat, a choked sob escaping instead. Tears I'd been holding back for far too long spilled down my cheeks, and I found myself enveloped in Theo's comforting embrace. He was an unlikely friend, the shy, socially awkward tech genius who lived down the hall. We'd bonded over our shared love of books and penchant for staying in on Friday nights, content in each other's company. "It's Marla," I managed finally, pulling away to swipe at my damp cheeks. "She's done something unforgivable." Theo's expression hardened, and he guided me into my apartment, settling us on the worn sofa. "Tell me everything." And so I did, the whole sordid tale spilling from my lips in a torrent of heartbreak and fury. Theo listened without interruption, his jaw tightening as I recounted Marla's latest betrayal. "That manipulative, lying snake," he muttered when I'd finished. "She's gotten away with this for far too long, Lila. It's time we put a stop to her games once and for all." I blinked, taken aback by the steely determination in his voice. Theo was always the voice of reason, the level-headed counterbalance to my occasional bouts of recklessness. "What do you mean?" I asked warily. He leaned forward, his eyes glinting with a newfound intensity. "We're going to expose her for the fraud she really is. Strip away that perfect facade she's so carefully constructed and show everyone the truth that she's nothing but a selfish, conniving witch who'll stop at nothing to get what she wants." A slow smile spread across my face as the weight of his words sank in. Revenge, sweet, delicious revenge, was finally within my grasp. "How?" I breathed, my pulse quickening at the thought. Theo's smile turned feral, sending a shiver down my spine. "Leave that to me. I might not be much of a fighter, but I know my way around a computer system better than anyone. If there's dirt to be found on your sister, I'll find it." Over the next few weeks, Theo became my co-conspirator, my trusted ally in the battle against Marla's tyranny. He hacked into her emails, her bank records, her social media accounts, unearthing a trail of lies and deceptions that would make even the most hardened cynic blush. Financial misdeeds, extramarital affairs, backstabbing her so-called friends. No stone was left unturned as we meticulously compiled our arsenal of evidence. With each new revelation, the flames of my determination burned brighter, fueled by the knowledge that soon, very soon, Marla's reign of terror would come crashing down around her. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Theo asked one night as we pored over the mountain of incriminating files. "There's no going back once we pull the trigger." I met his gaze, unwavering. "She brought this on herself. It's long past time Marla faced the consequences of her actions." A slow smile spread across his lips and he gave a solemn nod. "Then let's burn that bitch's world to the ground." The evidence was damning. A meticulously curated trail of infidelities, financial indiscretions, and outright lies that would make even the most hardened criminal blush. As Theo and I pored over the files, I could feel the righteousness of our cause burning within me, stoking the flames of a long-simmering fury. Your sister really is a piece of work, isn't she? Theo muttered, shaking his head in disbelief as he scrolled through yet another lurid email exchange between Marla and her latest boy toy. I shot him a withering glance. You're telling me I've been dealing with her lies and manipulations my entire life. He let out a low whistle. Well, she certainly made a mess of things this time. The question is, what are we going to do about it? A slow, feral grin spread across my face as the pieces finally clicked into place. We're going to give her exactly what she deserves, a taste of her own medicine. Theo arched an eyebrow, intrigued. Do tell. Over the next few hours, we hashed out the details of our plan. A meticulously orchestrated takedown that would strip Marla of every last shred of her carefully cultivated dignity. No more hiding behind her pristine veneer, no more playing the doting wife and beloved daughter. It was time for the world to see her for the duplicitous snake she truly was. We'll start by planting seeds of doubt, I explained, tapping my finger against the stack of incriminating documents. Leak a few choice tidbits to the right people, let the whispers and sideways glances begin to chip away at her perfect image. Theo nodded, his expression grim. And then we go for the jugular. Release everything we've got in one fell swoop. Let the truth detonate like a nuclear bomb right in the middle of her precious little fairy tale. Exactly. My gaze hardened, steely with resolve. I want her to lose everything. Her sham of a marriage, her status, her reputation. I want her to feel the same burning humiliation she inflicted on me all those years ago. For a moment, Theo's eyes softened, and he reached across the table to take my hand in his calloused grip. Are you sure about this, Lila? This is a point of no return. Once we set this plan in motion, there's no going back. I met his gaze, unflinching. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Marla has lied and cheated and stolen her way through life for far too long. It's time she learned that actions have consequences. His lips curved into a grim smile, and he gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. Then let's make that bitch pay. Over the next few weeks, we put our plan into motion, gradually leaking choice morsels from our trove of evidence to select members of our social circle. At first, the reveals were subtle, a whispered rumor here, a meaningful glance there, but soon, the doubts began to take root. I could see it in the way Marla's closest friends started to regard her with narrowed eyes, in the stony silences that greeted her at book club meetings and Sunday brunches. Little by little, the cracks in her meticulously constructed facade began to show, spiderwebbing outward until the whole sham threatened to crumble beneath the weight of its own deceit. And still, we kept the pressure on, releasing more damning evidence with every passing week. Sordid photos, incriminating audio recordings, bank statements detailing her financial treachery, nothing was off limits in our quest to decimate her credibility. Throughout it all, Marla remained blissfully oblivious, her perfectly coiffed head held high as she swanned through town, utterly convinced of her own untouchability. Her arrogance only fueled my determination, stoking the flames of a long-simmering fury that would soon erupt into an inferno of retribution. Because the best was yet to come, the grand finale that would reduce her entire world to ashes. I could hardly wait. The whispers had begun, a steady undercurrent of doubt and suspicion that rippled through our once idyllic town, eroding the foundations of Marla's carefully constructed fairy tale. I could see it in the sidelong glances and thinly veiled sneers that followed her wherever she went, the once adoring masses now regarding her with a newfound wariness. It was working, I realized with a quiet thrill of satisfaction. Our drip feed of damning evidence was having the desired effect, ripping away the layers of artifice and exposing the rot that lay festering beneath Marla's immaculate veneer. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. We needed to go bigger, to plant the seeds of discord deeper, if we were to ensure the total annihilation of her pristine reputation. Time for phase 2, Theo murmured, his expression grim as he handed me a thick manila envelope. I raised an eyebrow, thumbing through the contents, a dossier packed with incriminating photos, financial statements, and transcripts of Marla's most salacious indiscretions. Are you sure about this? I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. Once we put this out there, there's no taking it back. Theo's jaw tightened, his eyes hardening with resolve. She made her bed, Lila. Now she has to lie in it. With a steadying breath, I nodded. It was now or never. Over the next few weeks, I embarked on a whirlwind tour of reconnection, reaching out to our once tight circle of family and friends with the guise of reconciliation. Coffees and long lunches were had, old bonds rekindled under the pretense of burying the hatchet and moving forward. All the while, I subtly steered the conversations toward Marla, sharing carefully curated snippets from the dossier that painted a vivid picture of her betrayals and moral failings. "I can't believe she did that to you," Mom gasped, her eyes wide with horror as she pored over the damning evidence. "Oh, Lila, I'm so sorry. We never should have taken her side." Dad merely shook his head in stunned silence, his expression stricken as the full weight of Marla's deceptions finally sank in. One by one, the dominoes began to fall, each revelation stripping away another layer of blind loyalty, until the full, ugly truth was laid bare. By the time I was done, our once impenetrable inner circle had been thoroughly turned, their allegiances shifting in the wake of Marla's undeniable transgressions. Even Evan, her hapless husband, found himself wavering as the sordid details of her infidelities and financial treachery came to light. "I can't believe she'd do this to me," he muttered, running a hand through his hair as he stared at the incriminating photos. "After everything." His voice trailed off, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of sympathy for the man who had once been my world. But the feeling was quickly quashed, smothered beneath the weight of his own betrayal all those years ago. He'd made his bed, too. Now he could damn well lie in it. With each encounter, each deftly planted revelation, I could feel the tides beginning to turn in my favor, the ground slowly but surely shifting beneath Marla's feet. Her downfall was imminent, and I savored the anticipation like a fine vintage wine, letting it linger on my tongue as I bided my time. Because soon, very soon, I would have my reckoning, and Marla would finally answer for the lifetime of hurt and humiliation she'd inflicted upon me. This time, there would be no manipulations or lies to sway the judgment, only the cold, hard truth laid bare for all to see. I could hardly wait. The air was thick with anticipation as our family and friends gathered at Mom and Dad's house for what I had billed as a long-overdue reunion. Marla, of course, was fashionably late, a perfectly calculated move to ensure all eyes were on her as she swept into the living room, her every step oozing false graciousness. "So wonderful to have everyone together again," she simpered, air-kissing her way around the room as if she were royalty bestowing favor upon her subjects. I watched in stony silence, feeling the weight of the manila envelope burning a hole in my purse. Tonight was the night, the culmination of months of meticulous planning and strategizing. By the time the evening was through, Marla's reign of deceit would be nothing more than a smoldering ruin. "Let's get started, shall we?" I said, rising to my feet and gesturing for Marla to join me at the front of the room. "I think it's high time we cleared the air about a few things." Marla's perfectly arched brows knit together in a slight frown, but she acquiesced with a saccharine smile, ever the gracious hostess. Little did she know, her world was about to come crashing down around her. "For years, you've peddled this fiction, this carefully constructed fairy tale about who you are and what our relationship is," I began, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. "You've lied and manipulated and backstabbed everyone around you, all in service of maintaining your precious image." Marla's smile faltered, the first cracks beginning to show in her impeccable mask. "Lila, what are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Marla. It's over." I pulled the envelope from my purse, letting its damning contents spill across the coffee table in a cascade of incriminating evidence. "The truth is finally out." A hushed gasp rippled through the room as our friends and family leaned in, their gazes riveted on the lurid photos and bank statements that laid bare the full extent of Marla's betrayals. Infidelities, financial crimes, blatant lies, it was all there, exposed for the world to see in glaring, undeniable detail. Marla's face, drained of color, her perfectly painted lips parting in a silent scream of outrage as the reality of her situation began to sink in. You did this. How could you?" A bitter laugh escaped my lips as I regarded her with cold disdain. "How could I? That's rich, coming from you. You've spent our entire lives undermining me, stealing everything that should have been mine. Well, no more. This is your reckoning, Marla. The consequences you've been dodging for far too long." "That's a lie." she snarled, rounding on our shell-shocked parents with pleading eyes. "You can't possibly believe this nonsense. It's all a bunch of doctored photos and falsified documents. I swear!" But the certainty had already seeped from her voice, cracking beneath the weight of the incriminating evidence that surrounded her. One by one, Mom and Dad, our friends, even Evan himself began to nod in grim acceptance, their eyes reflecting a newfound hardness as the scales finally fell from their eyes. "I think we've seen more than enough, Marla," Dad said quietly, his voice heavy with a weariness that spoke of decades of being manipulated and misled. "It's over." A strangled sound escaped Marla's throat, a guttural cry of anguished disbelief as the full weight of her deceptions came crashing down upon her. In that moment she was utterly alone, cast adrift in a sea of contempt and censure, with no allies, no lifelines to cling to. As I watched her crumple to the floor in a heap of designer clothes and smeared makeup, a profound sense of vindication washed over me. At long last justice had been served, and I had been the one to deliver it. The sweet taste of victory had never been so intoxicating. The aftermath of my grand revelation was swift and brutal, a reckoning that left Marla's once charmed life in smoldering ruins. As the shock wore off and the true depths of her deceptions came to light, a palpable shift took place, the tide of public opinion turning decisively against her. Suddenly, the same people who had once fawned over her every move couldn't be bothered to make eye contact, their faces a study in thinly veiled disdain and revulsion. Marla's supposedly dear friends dropped her like a bad habit, their long-standing allegiances crumbling beneath the weight of her exposed betrayals. Even our own family wasn't spared the fallout. Mom and Dad, so long blinded by Marla's manipulations, now regarded her with a potent mix of disappointment and simmering anger. "How could you do this to us?" Mom demanded during one particularly heated exchange, her eyes rimmed with unshed tears. "After everything we've done for you, all the chances we gave you." Marla, for once, was uncharacteristically subdued, her usual bravado nowhere to be found. "I'm sorry," she mumbled, her gaze downcast and lifeless. "I never meant to hurt anyone." The words rang hollow, a feeble attempt at contrition that did little to salve the wounds her deceit had inflicted. Dad merely shook his head, his expression hardening. "Save it, Marla. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it." And what a bed it was, a tangled web of lies and indiscretions that quickly began to unravel with every passing day. Photos of her numerous affairs surfaced online, igniting a firestorm of scandal that left her reputation in tatters. Financial discrepancies were unearthed, hinting at potential legal troubles on the horizon. Even Evan, her hapless husband, couldn't turn a blind eye any longer, filing for divorce amidst a torrent of sordid revelations about her infidelity. Through it all, I watched with a strange sense of detachment, as if observing the implosion of someone else's life from a great distance. Gone was the seething rage that had once consumed me, replaced by a profound sense of catharsis, a weight lifted from my shoulders after years of carrying the burden of Marla's betrayals. She had brought this upon herself, I reminded myself whenever a flicker of residual guilt threatened to take hold. This was justice, pure and simple. The scales finally balanced after a lifetime of being tipped in her favor. Still, a part of me couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity as I watched Marla's world crumble around her. She had become a pariah, shunned and reviled by the very people who had once hung on her every word. Her once vibrant spirit was utterly extinguished, replaced by a hollow shell of a woman who seemed to drift through life in a perpetual haze of shame and regret. It was during one such encounter, as I passed her on the street and caught a glimpse of her haunted expression, that a sudden clarity washed over me. This broken, pathetic creature was the true Marla, stripped bare of all her pretenses and deceptions, and in that moment I realized that I had already won. There was no need for further retribution or grandstanding. Her downfall was complete, her infamous reign of terror reduced to ashes and ruin. All that remained was for me to turn my back on the smoldering wreckage and begin charting a new course, one free from the shackles of her influence and the bitter chains of the past. As I walked away, head held high and shoulders squared, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of lightness, as if a great weight had finally been lifted from my soul. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years it belonged solely to me. Marla's fall from grace was absolute, and I, the forgotten sister she had wronged so deeply, had not only survived it, I had emerged victorious. In the weeks and months that followed Marla's spectacular downfall, an odd sort of calm settled over my life. The all-consuming fury that had once burned like a raging inferno within me had finally been extinguished, leaving in its wake a profound sense of peace and acceptance. Oh, there were still moments when the old resentments threatened to resurface. A passing glimpse of Marla's haunted, hollow-eyed stare, or an errant comment from a well-meaning friend that dredged up the lingering pain of her betrayals. But those moments were fleeting, mere hiccups in my newfound state of tranquility. Because at long last I was free from the shackles of Marla's manipulations and the bitter chains of the past that had bound me for far too long. With her reign of deceit laid bare and her carefully cultivated image reduced to ash, the power she'd held over me had simply evaporated like a puff of acrid smoke dispersed by the winds of change. It was an odd sort of victory. I mused as I wandered the sun-dappled aisles of my bookstore one crisp autumn morning. Not the blaze of glory I might have once envisioned, with Marla beaten and humbled at my feet. No, this was something quieter, more profound. A reclamation of self, a shedding of old skins, and the rebirth of my own sense of worth and identity. "Hey, you!" The soft tenor of Theo's voice drew me from my reverie, and I turned to find him leaning against the doorframe, a hesitant smile playing at the corners of his mouth. My heart gave a treacherous little flutter at the sight of him. My co-conspirator, my partner in vengeance, and perhaps something more? "Hey, yourself," I replied, arching an eyebrow in silent query. "Everything okay?" He drew in a steadying breath, seeming to steel himself for whatever words were about to come tumbling out. I wanted to check in, see how you're doing with, well, everything." My lips curved in a rueful smile. "You mean with taking down the wicked witch of the Midwest?" Theo's grin widened, the familiar teasing glint returning to his eyes. "Something like that, yeah." I shrugged, aiming for nonchalance, even as my pulse quickened beneath the weight of his steady gaze. "I'm good, Theo. Better than good, actually. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I feel free." His expression softened, those warm eyes of his drinking me in with an intensity that sent a shiver racing down my spine. "I'm glad to hear that, Lila. Really glad." We lapsed into silence then, the words hanging heavy and electric between us. In that moment, I could have sworn I saw a flicker of something deeper in Theo's gaze. A promise, a beckoning toward new horizons and uncharted territory. But before I could gather the courage to give voice to the questions burning on the tip of my tongue, the spell was broken by the cheerful tinkling of the bell above the door, heralding the arrival of a customer. Theo blinked, his cheeks flushing slightly as he stepped back and cleared his throat. "Well, I should let you get back to it. Just, you know where to find me if you need anything, right?" I nodded, my own face growing warm as I scrambled to regain my composure. "Of course, always." With one last lingering look, he turned and slipped out into the bustling street, leaving me to ponder the myriad of possibilities that seemed to stretch out before me. New vistas waiting to be explored, unfettered by the baggage of the past. As I watched Theo's retreating form disappear into the crowd, I couldn't help but feel a spark of hope flicker to life deep within my chest. A new chapter was unfolding, one penned by my own hand and ruled not by the whims of others, but by the simple truths that had guided me through my darkest hours: resilience, determination, justice. Marla's reign was over. It was my turn to take the stage, and this time I had every intention of basking in the spotlight.
Our reservation for 7 persons is accurate. For this woman who isn't counted, I would appreciate it if you could set aside a different seat. Elizabeth's mother, my husband's mother, was known for her loud demands and her enjoyment of making jokes about me. But today would probably be the last of these days, since I am aware of a secret she has been harboring. I'm going to spill the beans during the family get-together today. Natalie is my name. I'm a 28-year-old cook at work. After completing culinary school with honors, I started working in a well-regarded Western restaurant in the city. It was there that I got to know George, a kind client who would eventually become my spouse. 3 generations of the neighborhood have cherished the antique electronics business that George inherited. Following the death of his father last year, George has assumed the role of 3rd-generation owner. Although my mother, father, and even my brother are all working professionals in the culinary industry, we had a typical-looking home when I was growing up. Being up in such a setting has given me early exposure to a wide range of culinary skills and information. I excelled in culinary school and finished at the top of my class because of my background and natural skill. Even though I tend to be quiet, I've always had faith in my ability to cook. But after being married to George, her confidence started to wane. This resulted from our living closely together with Elizabeth, which started soon after our marriage. George and his parents shared a home on a regular basis. He sincerely cared for his mother, who was mourning after the death of his father. I had wanted to spend our early married years together, especially since I had granted his desire to live together. As the eldest son, I did think George would ultimately move in with his parents, but I never imagined it would happen soon after our marriage. We could have talked about it before we were married if he had communicated this sooner. Perhaps he had his own motives, or he just didn't want to annoy me. There would be no difference if I regretted it today. Elizabeth proved to be gentler than I had anticipated when we moved in together. She used to treat me to cream puffs from my favorite bakery and would tell me to slack off from domestic tasks since she was busy. She did most of the housekeeping. She made our meals every day, but I wasn't quite sure how to season them to my liking. This worried me. Every meal had a lot of salt. I reasoned that it may be typical of the North, as I had heard that Elizabeth was from there. I seem to remember reading in periodicals or watching TV programs that folks in the North had a preference for saltier foods. However, I was aware that this was only one viewpoint or piece of common knowledge. Actually, a northern coworker of mine consistently states that she likes her salt to be milder. However, Elizabeth's cooking differed greatly from what I had been told or what my colleague thought was best. For example, the richness of the sauce in her stew obscured the colorful elements, even though they should have stood out. It tasted like I was dumping intense sauce right into my mouth when I tasted it. It doesn't feel fulfilling if there's not enough flavor, is it? Natalie, please eat plenty. Wondering inwardly, is this the standard taste? My husband said, "Did you adjust the taste to be a bit lighter today?" As I checked to see how he was responding. Yes, I considered Natalie's preference and made it a tad lighter than usual. This is considered light. I asked myself. My feelings of astonishment at the time are so hard to put into words. After a while, maybe from always eating food prepared by Elizabeth, my palate became numb. When I was cooking at work, I began to question my own palate. Fortunately, the head chef performed the last taste tests, so there were no serious problems. But I have severe concerns about it. I came up with a strategy to deal with Elizabeth's excessive spice in every meal. Getting up earlier than her and making my own breakfast was one of the answers. This new regimen prevented my performance at work from declining, but it backfired, making Elizabeth's attitude toward me a see. She started to ignore my comments and walk past when I greeted her in the morning. I questioned her one evening about a meal I'd worked extremely hard on, and she said, "Did you really season this properly?" The fundamentals of cooking are crucial, Natalie, and I get how busy you are. I think this has a deep flavor since I season it just enough. She went on, "That's why I'm saying it's bland, in spite of my response. You are incapable of comprehending anything so simple. However, I don't think it would be good to add extra seasoning. What's wrong with indulging in delectable cuisine? Never put too much stock in yourself simply because you can cook a little." After saying this, she poured a generous amount of sauce over the meal I had cooked. Do they believe I'm being haughty? I'm thinking about health concerns as well. I had the impression that her shift in attitude could have had a cause or history. My husband has 2 older sisters, both of whom have established their own families and are living with their husbands and children. Both sisters were very friendly and had warmly welcomed me from the beginning of our marriage. If you ever have trouble or concerns with our mother, let us know. We'll intervene and help. Such encouragement made me feel cherished, even though we had just gotten to know each other. The husbands they chose were also very friendly and helped create a harmonious atmosphere within the family. Especially Emily, who has a lovely 5-year-old daughter, had a grand birthday celebration for her planned at her house. I was asked to help with food preparation, which I gladly accepted. As a result, the dining table was filled with a variety of dishes. Each dish was distinctively unique, colorful, and very appetizing. As the party began, my daughter said, "She really loves the spaghetti from the restaurant where Natalie works. Being able to enjoy that taste at home is wonderful." Emily said, full of admiration, "I'm truly happy to hear that. Please eat a lot," I replied, unable to hide my joy. "Thank you for making this spaghetti. It's really delicious." She expressed her gratitude with sparkling eyes. "Everyone, please try this stew I made. It's exceptional," she said slightly shyly, offering her dish to Emily's daughter. "That makes my mouth feel spicy when I eat it, so I don't like it." Emily's daughter frowned and declined. Can I have some more water?" she said after trying a few bites, barely keeping a smile. His glass was completely empty after a few sips. "Mom, I've always felt your seasoning is a bit heavy, but today's is especially so. Maybe you can learn some cooking tips from Natalie." "Shut up," she exclaimed angrily and left the scene. I somewhat regretted offering to help with the cooking from the start. Amidst the sour mood, the party ended quickly. I'm sure Emily meant her words lightly, but not just me. Elizabeth must have put love and effort into her dishes as well. It felt unjust for our heartfelt efforts to be belittled with a mere comment. I'm truly sorry for causing trouble today. That night, I mustered the courage to express my apologies to her. "You should try not to act so high and mighty. This isn't your house after all," she responded coldly, much sharper than I'd anticipated. From the next day, life became increasingly tough. She would recklessly season the meals I'd carefully prepared, and on the worst days, she'd even throw them away. Midway through eating, I turned to my husband, seeking support in these trying times. "Did you by any chance antagonize her? Maybe you should try listening more. Aren't you overreacting a bit?" He failed to take my distress seriously. Moreover, despite being married for only half a year, he began coming home late, often not until midnight. He'd claim it was work, but he even started missing family events like Emily's daughter's birthday party. The strain in our marital relationship deepened with each passing day. We were married for only half a year, so the idea of divorce felt premature. But then another hurdle arose. Elizabeth tripped on our stairs and severely injured her leg. Although Emily kindly offered to help with her care, "You're the wife of this house and name right, so it's only natural for you to take care of me." Ever since that declaration, my daily life dramatically changed. From minor tasks to major requests, attending to her needs became a daily routine. Even during work hours, I'd frequently receive calls from her, disrupting my tasks to cater to her whims. Initially, my colleagues were understanding, but their patience wore thin due to constant interruptions. I eventually decided to resign. When Elizabeth learned about it, "So you've quit your job." How pitiable, she jeered, clearly unable to hide her glee. Ever since then, my days were consumed with meeting Elizabeth's spontaneous demands at all hours. Both my mind and body were worn down. My husband's reduced presence at home weighed heavily on my heart. According to him, due to work-related demands, he often had to spend nights at the office. But I couldn't shake off my doubts and found it hard to believe him. I began to ponder our next steps. I couldn't stand by and do nothing any longer. Amidst these thoughts, I concluded that I should teach Elizabeth and my husband a lesson. A few days later, on a bright morning, an opportunity arose. The three of us sat down for breakfast together. I've been thinking that maybe it's time for us to consider getting a divorce. At my words, both of them looked back in shock. What? This is so sudden. We're still newlyweds, WTS. Also, aren't you the one worried about what people will think? Are you suspecting I'm cheating on you? I'd never even think of that. I'm truly surprised. Do you intend to tarnish our family's reputation over this? Natalie, aren't you being a bit faultless? You barely come home, and Mom constantly belittles me. I can't be satisfied in such a household environment. I've made up my mind. Confronted with my newfound resolve, they were taken aback. I'm sorry, I'll try to be more attentive to our home life. Even if you'd like to take a break and go to your parents for a change of pace, I'll understand. But considering Mom's leg injury, could you still help her out for a while? Seeing my husband apologize, I felt a bit disoriented, but I could also sense a slight hint of resentment in him. I'd like you to reflect a bit more on the events that transpired. There are many things I'm not content with either, but can't we keep trying to live together? Maybe your feelings might change, and we might change too. At those words, I took a deep breath and tersely replied, I'll think about it. At that moment, a smug smile appeared on their faces. Seeing that expression, their blood ties were evident. For the next few days, the atmosphere at home shifted. My husband began returning home earlier from work. However, this peace was short-lived. He started coming home late again, and Elizabeth's behavior reverted to its previous coldness. While her injury didn't seem to be improving, she frequently went out. As I questioned her actions, I was soon to discover a shocking truth. One day, my cell phone rang incessantly. The callers were my husband and Elizabeth. Natalie, where are you right now? Why did you leave Mom all by herself? What happened? His voice was filled with anger, and I felt he wouldn't understand my perspective. I'm at my parents' house right now, but didn't you agree to me returning home? That was supposed to be a temporary solution. Mom isn't fully recovered yet. What went wrong? It's the noise in the background. I recognized the distinct voice of Elizabeth. I'll never return to that house. I want all future communications to go through lawyers. Saying this calmly, I hung up. For the next few days, I enjoyed a peaceful time at my parents' house. My parents cooked my favorite dishes, and I felt deeply grateful for every meal. In return, I also cooked for them. Natalie, your cooking is still the best. Hearing this from my mother, tears of happiness welled up in my eyes. On one of these peaceful days, I received an unexpected message. Seeing the name displayed on my smartphone screen, I was momentarily stunned. It was from the one person I least wanted to be involved with, Elizabeth. The message contained an apology for her past actions and an invitation to her upcoming birthday party. Honestly, I didn't want to accept the invitation. However, the venue was a renowned restaurant, which is rare to get a reservation. Considering it a bit of a luxury treat, I decided to attend and convey my intention. Elizabeth seemed even happier than expected and shared the details. Then the day came. The venue was an upscale restaurant near the station, becoming increasingly popular among food enthusiasts. The reason? A new chef who had trained in France and had recently returned after rigorous training overseas. His dishes were acclaimed as authentically French, receiving rave reviews from diners in the city. Upon arriving at the main entrance of the restaurant, I saw George and Elizabeth already waiting. Recognizing me, they both wore a surprisingly smug expression. The attendees of the party were the same as last time: Emily, her husband, and their children. It was a small gathering of 8 people. The topic of divorce hadn't been shared with them yet, and I planned to break the news at the end of the night. After a while, they arrived with smiles on their faces. "Natalie, it's been so long. You look a bit slimmer. Are you okay?" "Yes, I'm fine. Thank you for your concern." And so we headed into the restaurant. "Excuse me, the reservation list indicates 7 people. Could you please confirm?" I was internally surprised. "Yes, my reservation for 7 people is correct. Could you prepare a separate seat for this lady?" She was clearly referring to me. "Wait, Natalie, why is this happening?" "I'm not surprised as you are. It seems there's a surprise tonight." "I'll ask the waiter if they can accommodate service at another seat." The waiter kindly guided me to a different seat, positioned slightly hidden from them. As everyone sat down and started eating, I heard, "This spaghetti tastes just like the one Natalie makes." I felt warmed by her comment. This restaurant's dishes have become even more delicious since they got the new chef, especially the meat dish that's coming out later. "It's highly recommended." George nodded in agreement. The anticipated meat dish was brought, and its lavishness raised everyone's expectations. Delicious-smelling dishes were constantly being brought to Emily's table. Meanwhile, not a single dish had been served to George and Elizabeth. "Why is our food taking so long?" Her voice was quite loud, causing nearby customers to glance over. "I deeply apologize. The chef is preparing something special for the 2 of you, so it's taking a little extra time. Please wait for just a bit longer." Despite her annoyance, Elizabeth's face showed a hint of satisfaction, knowing they were getting special treatment. A chef's special dish. That's exciting." Soon after, footsteps could be heard coming from the kitchen. Their expressions froze in surprise because it was me, dressed in a chef's hat and apron. "What? Natalie, why are you dressed like that?" Though this must have been Natalie's surprise. "This is really fun." While Emily and her husband enjoyed my appearance, George and Elizabeth were taken aback. I gently smiled and set the specially arranged dishes before them. "I've prepared a special menu just for the 2 of you." At the center of Elizabeth's plate, a beautiful black lump was garnished with a rich sauce. I've accentuated this using a special sauce. I'll add a little more topping to this sauce. Pouring more sauce on the dish, I felt satisfied seeing Elizabeth's surprised face. "And here's a special dish for you, sir." On George's plate, various batters were beautifully aligned, each shining brightly. "Also, please try it with this special sauce." Placing an elegant sauce bottle on the table, I watched the service. Emily's daughter laughed cheerfully. They looked a bit surprised yet intrigued. They both were seething with anger. "This is unbelievable. I've never seen such an inappropriate service. Call the manager. I'm the person in charge here. Is there a problem? Are you the one allowing such disrespectful service? This is unforgivable. We're going to exercise our rights as customers and sue you. Feel free, but we're also considering legal action for the disruption you've caused." "How dare you?" It turns out that they often visited this restaurant, always being demanding. They constantly complained about the food. The staff already saw them as problematic customers. Until now, considering our familiar relationship, we treated them with leniency. But now that Natalie has chosen to distance herself from you two, we will treat you impartially. Is that okay, Natalie? Of course. Peter, Elizabeth, and George were utterly stunned upon realizing that the person in charge of this renowned restaurant was my brother. In reality, this popular restaurant was a product of Peter's diligent management and hard work. They had not been informed of this fact. Peter had previously undergone advanced training in France, and because of his work commitments, he was unable to attend our wedding. Although he had sent a generous wedding gift, he had never spoken with Elizabeth or George before. However, he remembered their faces because he had received pictures from family gatherings. I couldn't attend the wedding, so I wanted to greet you when you visited, but every time you both seemed too busy with your guests. Elizabeth and George seemed lost for words upon hearing this. We didn't know any of this. Could you explain? Even though she sounded cheerful, the slight shadow in her eyes showed she was taking this matter seriously. Actually, we came here to dine with some shopkeepers from the town's marketplace. It's trendy these days to have dinner in such modern restaurants. At that moment, a staff member approached politely. During your last visit, you left behind an item. Please allow me to return it. Handing over a shimmering earring, they added, you often dine here with men wearing earrings. Isn't that a bit risky? I was momentarily surprised by Emily's question, but chuckled. Well, it's not exactly like that. You see, he's secretly involved with the woman who works at the flower shop across the street. George's face momentarily froze in surprise. How did I come to know of this secret? A few weeks ago, I had felt suspicious and hired a detective to investigate. As a result, I had obtained several photos of him enjoying dinner with her at this restaurant, and even moments where they entered a hotel together. To be honest, I felt more comfortable with her. Marrying you was a mistake. I'm planning to file for divorce. Just be prepared. This was the first time George had openly spoken about divorce, but for me, it was a moment I had anticipated. Just don't forget to pay the alimony. Don't worry. I recently secured a big business deal, and financially, I'm pretty well off now. I'll gladly pay all of the alimony in full. Hearing that gives me peace of mind now about you. Until now, Elizabeth had been wide-eyed at the unfolding conversation. She was a regular at this upscale restaurant and was known by the staff. What do you want from me? Since my husband passed away, I don't think anyone has the right to complain about my behavior. Actually, I had a detective thoroughly investigate your secrets too. It turned out you've been in a secret relationship for 5 years. But wasn't it just a year ago that your husband passed away? What are you talking about? Emily and her siblings, hearing this for the first time, stared at their mother in shocked anger. For them, who had deeply cherished their father, this revelation was unbearable. Although I, too, was surprised by the investigation's outcome, when I asked the detective why he knew so much about Elizabeth, it turned out that their father had once hired the same detective agency. You deceived him for so long, even while he was still alive. And George, even while with Natalie, you were seeing another woman. How could you? In Emily and her siblings' eyes, there was deep anger and disappointment. The tense atmosphere at our table had caught the attention of other diners who started glancing our way. We promised to resolve this matter at home and called it a night for the dinner. As I left, I high-fived the restaurant staff and Peter, expressing my gratitude. A few days later, under the stern gaze of Emily and her siblings, George and I proceeded with the formal divorce process. Now I'm free. I won't regret anything, no matter what happens, he stated confidently. I never expected this outcome. Even after I told you about my bad leg, I never imagined being treated this way. Watch your step. She recoiled in surprise. In truth, her leg had already healed, yet she had been pretending to be in pain to maintain a superior attitude towards me. Her behavior once again left me in shock. She and her spouse will never again be strangers to me. I had no regrets at all, even though our marriage terminated in less than a year. I was astonished to see that the alimony from my husband and his lover had been placed simultaneously when I checked my bank account a few days later. My spouse appeared to have paid for her fair portion as well. I could finally see them as having left my life after learning this. Then there were some intriguing developments about my husband's connection with his mistress. He had taken on debt to cover the high alimony, but she deserted him with relative ease not long after our divorce was finalized. I found out via Emily's research that the lady is notorious in the community for preying on married men. Peter told us after the incident at the restaurant that the regular customers were thrilled with our surprise and were also tired of George and Elizabeth's antics. The restaurant forbade those two people from entering after that. Furthermore, the society rapidly learned about their dishonest views. My spouse had been bragging about a big deal that was subsequently canceled. His electrical business had survived because of the community's strong sense of trust. Given that this confidence has now been betrayed, it is easy to see how difficult management will be going forward. Elizabeth's life after it became very challenging. Subsequent testing indicated that her bad lifestyle was having an impact on her health. She had been abruptly dumped by her longtime partner. Her health was closely linked to her lifestyle, which was hardly something that called for compassion. However, I had the good fortune to go back to my former workplace, a Western-style restaurant. Despite being aware of my background, the management and personnel extended a warm welcome upon my return. Emily, the spaghetti lady, and her family continued to frequent this restaurant, and their presence was a huge source of encouragement for me. They had made the decision to cut all contact with George and Elizabeth. A profound wound that appeared hard to heal was the wrath they felt for what they had done, especially in the wake of their father's death and the realization of the truth. A special place in my heart is reserved for the pleasure of cooking. I actually feel lucky when I am experiencing this delight, which is the exact time I treasure the most. No matter what you say, I'm divorcing you. The luggage should arrive today or tomorrow, as it was dispatched yesterday. My living partner will be my affair partner. Is 5 cents worth of compensation enough? Is it true that you were unfaithful to your fair partner? I'm saying that, so please go out of here. I mean, it's awk with me, but My spouse continues sending bags to our house, and they keep coming. The majority of it is made up of accessories, apparel, and fashion-related things for young ladies. There are also a few branded bags. These were probably bought by my spouse. Mia is my name. I am employed for a reputable firm and am 28 years old. As a member of the secretarial department, I work as the managing director's secretary, who also happens to be the president's son. I complete my task with diligence each day. The managing director then unexpectedly made a proposal to me one day. After everything went smoothly, we made the decision to tie the knot that autumn. Michael is the name of my spouse. Let's have lots of kids once we're married, he exclaims excitedly. To which I reply, you're getting ahead of yourself. Our kids alone could form a baseball team, he believes. I respond in jest, oh, Michael, please spare me. Michael, therefore, has a strong desire to raise a family. Even yet, I still think Michael, who is my age, may be a little immature at times. I've been using contraceptives covertly. Despite the fact that having lots of kids could be enjoyable, I know it will drain me. Thus, even if we end up with many children, my intention is to keep the number to 3, with a maximum of 2 years between deliveries. Since our marriage, Michael has advanced to the position of senior managing director exceptionally quickly, and the firm has high hopes that he will take over as president in the near future. Michael's father used to be the president of the firm where I worked. My father-in-law, who is now the chairman, is a very amazing man. I worked in the secretary's department, therefore I also interacted with Michael while he was the managing director. There hasn't been enough workers in our secretarial office since you departed your job. We're stuck. Well, Dad, anyone can handle my job. That's true. Well, I'm delighted that you married my son. It's a significant loss for the company. Dad, flattery won't make a difference. But given how busy the secretarial department is all the time, it appears that my father-in-law was not entirely off the mark. I was replaced as secretary by a young woman who seemed to have a natural knack for being attractive. This is what my father-in-law told me. Hey, is your new secretary doing well? Oh, she's doing her best in her own way. It's a work in progress. Out of curiosity, I also quietly questioned my spouse, and he seemed to be keeping a tender eye on her. It appears stress-free, and Michael is pleasant to me, so maybe it's okay, or so I thought. However, since his promotion, Michael's workload has greatly grown, and he has progressively been more stern with me. It's probably because I have more duties now, and maybe this is the point where my work really counts. After all, I came into a marriage with the responsibility of supporting my spouse. I had set aside plans to become a mother. Michael appeared a little grumpy that day. Listen, I won't need a packed lunch from now on. What? Why not? The senior managing director believes that eating a packed lunch is awkward. I'm going to start going out to dine with my coworkers. I see. Comprehensive. What's the issue? Concerned about the cost of lunch? I didn't say it at all. Either way, that's the reality. You are no longer need to prepare lunch. His remarks were a little depressing. I had been doing my hardest to balance Michael's diet, but I guess he has his own social responsibilities. That's why I stopped packing sandwiches the next day. Then he began criticizing me for other things, like the clothes having creases and the fact that I still didn't have kids. Though I think I've cleaned and laundered everything well, it doesn't appear to have reached him. I'd frequently pondered what could be bothering Michael, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't figure it out. Maybe there's something going on that I'm missing. Days of internal conflict persisted. I even consulted my mother-in-law. Like my father-in-law, she treats me well. So what's the consultation about? Is something wrong? Well, Michael seems a bit off lately, and I can't figure out why. I see. Perhaps I was too lenient in raising him. I apologize. He can be quite selfish. No, he's an adult now, so it's not your responsibility. If I get the chance, I'll talk to him and make sure he doesn't trouble you. That's okay. It might be a marital issue, so I'll find the right time to ask him. Really? Are you sure? If anything happens, feel free to tell me anytime. Thank you. In the end, I returned home without seeking any help from my mother-in-law, but I worried that if Michael found out I'd confided in her, he might sulk again. So I think this was for the best. Just when I thought that way, something unexpected happened. My husband was assigned to a client company, making it difficult for him to commute from home. So he embarked on a solo assignment for about a month. Honestly, I felt a bit relieved because dealing with my husband's moods every day had been quite taxing. Despite not being a drinker, he started consuming alcohol and spouting hurtful words or nitpicking at my household chores. The day after drinking, he'd struggle to wake up in the morning, even missing work. It seemed like he was losing his professional edge. Perhaps this change of environment would be good for him too. I hope it provides a refreshing break and he returns to being the kind husband he used to be. Around 2.5 weeks after my husband's departure, something else happened. Maybe I let my guard down due to his absence, but my health deteriorated. Feeling feverish, I visited my regular doctor. To my surprise, I received unexpected news. I was pregnant. The thought of having a baby genuinely made me happy. Perhaps this could be the catalyst for Michael to become a doting father. It felt as though this little one had brought some happiness into our home. Just as I was contemplating whether to inform my husband about the pregnancy, I realized he would be returning in another 2 weeks. Rather than communicating through calls or emails, I wanted to see his face and share our joy in person, so I decided to wait for his return. However, I desperately needed to confide in someone. I chose to share the truth with my in-laws, keeping it confidential, given that they would soon become grandparents for the first time. They were genuinely thrilled and concerned about my well-being. My mother-in-law, having previously discussed my husband's recent moodiness, assured me that she would keep an eye on him. As the anticipated homecoming drew near, my husband unexpectedly extended his stay, leaving me without communication for several days. Something felt off, trusting my intuition. I called his workplace. I have an urgent matter. Could I speak to my husband? The office staff replied, the senior managing director, Smith, is already back at his company. Does that mean his assignment has ended? Yes. But is everything okay? Caught off guard, I quickly improvised. Oh, how embarrassing. I misunderstood. I apologize. Everything is fine. What should I do? Where is he now? No response, and I'm worried. Consulting my father-in-law or mother-in-law would likely escalate the situation. Besides being pregnant, I wanted to avoid emotional instability. So I decided to try contacting my husband's cell phone once more. To my surprise, after days of silence, he suddenly called the next day. Startled, I answered the phone promptly. Michael, where are you right now? Anywhere is fine. I called because you contacted me. Anywhere is not fine. What on earth is happening? I want a divorce. What? I was left speechless by the unexpected divorce announcement. Then my husband added more surprising words. Regardless of what you say, I'm getting a divorce. The luggage was sent yesterday, so it should arrive today or tomorrow. I'll be living with my affair partner. Is 5 cents sufficient as compensation? Affair partner? Does that mean you were cheating? That's what I'm saying. So please leave. Each word felt like a blow to my heart, and tears welled up. My husband conveyed only what was necessary and abruptly hung up the phone. I immediately tried calling back, but it seemed he had disconnected. I am filled with a mix of frustration and sorrow. From the outside, our marriage might have seemed like a marriage into wealth, but I've put in my own effort. It hurts. I've worked hard and endured, yet this outcome feels incredibly unfair. Now my husband plans to marry his affair partner, asking me to leave. The proposed compensation is just 5 cents, an almost non-existent amount, and I am carrying my husband's child. There's no way such treatment can be justified. I felt a simmering anger rise within me. In moments like these, I have no one I can truly confide in. My parents both passed away in an accident the year I started working, and I have no siblings. While I do have friends, I can't think of a close friend who would bear my family's shame with me. So I decided to contemplate revenge against my husband on my own. However, as for finding an ally, I had someone in my mind. Hello, Mia. Michael has returned, hasn't he? How is he? Is he in a good mood? My mother-in-law reached out the next day, expressing concern. It seemed that my husband hadn't informed his parents about the situation. Perhaps he was too preoccupied with his new love interest. Mom, I hesitated. What's wrong? Did something happen? Did he do something? Despite feeling uneasy, I decided to confide in my in-laws about everything. The hurtful words and snide remarks I've endured, his view of me solely as a childbearing entity, and the ultimate blow, the sudden divorce announcement without any communication from his assignment location. My mother-in-law appeared surprised, but offered comforting words. "I'm sorry, Mia. You don't need to apologize." "Mom, thank you for telling me. I'll discuss this thoroughly with my husband." "But if you do that, Michael's position at work. What does that matter? After treating you so poorly?" My tears welled up in response to my mother-in-law's kindness. As I sobbed into the phone, she gently reassured me. "Mia, your well-being is our utmost priority, both for my husband and me. But Michael's parents are doing something so cruel. Whether as a son or a parent, it is unacceptable. Mia, please focus on having a healthy, happy baby. But knowingly having a child while going through a divorce. Trust us on this. Lean on us." It seemed my mother-in-law had a plan. Given that I had no one else to turn to, practically, I decided to follow her advice. The packages my husband sent to our home kept arriving. Most of them contained young women's clothing, accessories, and fashion-related items. There were even branded bags. Presumably, my husband had purchased these items. The influx of packages made our home feel cramped. Curious about the situation, my mother-in-law visited and was surprised. Despite my initial reluctance to rely on my in-laws without informing my husband, I decided that since I was pregnant and would only stay briefly, it was acceptable to seek their help. According to what I heard from my in-laws, my husband hasn't contacted them or shown up at work. He's apparently using up his paid leave days. My father-in-law is furious that his son isn't communicating as a professional and as a human being. He's a disgrace. Dad, please don't scold him without hearing the whole story. But what he's doing isn't morally acceptable. That's true. I never thought he'd be like this. And so I decided to put into action the secret plan my in-laws had shared with me. One day, I contacted Ed, my husband, saying I had an important matter to discuss about the divorce. Falling right into the trap, he called me back with a blocked number. "Well, have you submitted the divorce papers I sent?" "Not yet." "Then what's this important matter?" "Will you agree to the divorce if you accept certain conditions?" What's with the high and mighty attitude? Are you saying you can't survive without my income? And we agreed on 5 cents for alimony, right? We never made such an agreement. There's no written confirmation. Mom, your dad is here too. Should I switch the call? I had the phone on speaker. The conversation was an open book to my in-laws. My father-in-law finally spoke up. "I got you fired from your job, and that secretary, Sophia, too." "Wait a minute, Dad. You can't just spring this on me." Mia had something even worse suddenly dropped on her. "This is nothing. You don't have to go that far. I'm wondering what I should do from now on. Think about Mia. She's been through worse." Despite feeling embarrassed by my husband's confusion, I interjected, "I won't give you a single cent." "Well, is that acceptable?" "I'm fine, but, I'm pregnant." "I never heard about that. But there was no right moment to tell you. But you won't get any alimony. That's because there's no record of it. If we fight, I'll win." "No, I didn't know. You never gave me a chance to tell you. I knew about my pregnancy during your assignment. You're already jobless, and that's not all. You'll pay Mia and the child proper alimony and child support. Your salary is a drop in the bucket, but you'll figure out the rest." "Dad, I messed up. I'll break up with Sophia and take care of Mia and the child. Just don't fire me." "It's too late. I'm disappointed in you. Go start fresh with your new woman. Mia will stay with us for a while. If you want to come back, you can stay with her. Mia has nowhere else to go. Besides, she's been treated horribly by her own husband. We'll take care of her. Mia won't be comfortable here either. So once you've paid her enough, she can leave. Michael, that's how it is. You're the one who put these ideas in their heads. This is outrageous. I haven't done anything. Your parents have been considerate of me and the baby. Clearly devastated, my husband hung up the phone without saying another word. A few days ago, I received the divorce papers from my husband and had my in-laws sign as witnesses. I've already submitted them. It's heartwarming to see my in-laws, who should technically be strangers, stand by my side. My ex-husband hasn't contacted me, and I've entered the final month of my pregnancy. Although alimony and child support haven't arrived, my former in-laws have stepped in to cover those expenses. They assured me that they'll collect the owed amount from Michael. A bit before the due day, I gave birth to a healthy child. He looks a lot like my ex-husband, and my ex-in-laws are certain he's Michael's kid. It's been 3 years since we started living this way, despite the unusual circumstances. We are so happy to watch our kid develop every day. Michael called his parents one day. Speaking, it became apparent that Sophia, who was eager to meet our kid, had rejected Michael. Ever since, he had lost a large chunk of his severance income and was living a precarious existence similar to that of a part-time employee. This way of living had proven intolerable for someone who had grown up in luxury. In essence, he was asking his father for financial assistance. Michael was quickly shut down by my ex-father-in-law, who insisted that he pay back the money he owed me. But Michael did not have the fortitude to confront the matter directly. My ex-father-in-law finally gave in, and Michael was able to rejoin the firm from the bottom up, as long as he continued to support me. Go back 4 years. Although Michael's child support payments have finally leveled out, he doesn't have much financial freedom in his present position. He performs night shifts in addition to day jobs. It's interesting to note that my kid is officially their grandchild because my previous in-laws and I were able to legally adopt each other. They have essentially broken off their parent-child bond with Michael in return. It doesn't change the official records, but my parents are really happy about it. When our kid starts first grade the next year, they are excitedly selecting school supplies like notebooks, backpacks, and shoes. I want to actively pursue job and make a contribution to society as soon as our son enters school. I can't depend on my parents indefinitely. In addition, I think working outside the house is a better fit for me than being a stay-at-home mother. I may sometimes occasionally rely on my parents, but I'm committed to raise my son as a single mom. My son will never grow up to be like my ex-husband. It is my firm belief that Pooh was a crook. How did you come upon this tale? Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. Till then, in our upcoming video. I'm 52 years old, and I am Polly Thompson. I've had more highs than lows in my life. However, allow me to begin at the outset. Soon after I graduated from college, I was married to David, my college love. We were infatuated, youthful, and full of ambition. My professional goal was to become a financial advisor with a focus on the securities market. Ever the enterprising man, David opened his own cookie factory. We were doing well in our careers, but there was a gap in our personal lives that we were unable to bridge. We were anxious to have kids. We would hope month after month, only to be let down. We experimented with everything, including special diets, reproductive treatments, and folk remedies. Nothing was successful. Following 3 fruitless IVF cycles and years of futile trying, David proposed surrogacy. I was apprehensive at first. I'm not sure, David. What if we are unable to bond? I talked about my worries one night. With serious eyes, David continued, Polly, look at me. We'll have that child together. Your eggs, my sperm. Just a temporary house serves as the surrogate. I thought about it for weeks. After talking to other couples who had used surrogacy and attending counseling sessions, I ultimately consented. After a drawn-out and anxious procedure, our daughter Emma was delivered after 9 months. All my anxieties vanished the instant I had her in my arms. With my eyes and David's nose, she was ideal. Life seems to be finished. I balanced work and parenting while David's cookie firm grew. We had a lovely home, a thriving business, and an adorable daughter. We were living the ideal. However, life has a habit of surprising you with unexpected turns of events. Emma was 5 years old when David began to complain of chronic back pain. It's nothing, he would reply. Most likely simply pulled a muscle at the gym. It wasn't nothing, though. I badgered him for weeks before I eventually got him to go to the doctor. We were struck with the news of advanced pancreatic cancer like a freight train. I was standing beside his hospital bed, holding his hand as he drew his final breath, 4 months after the diagnosis. Emma was soundly dozing in the waiting area, completely oblivious to the fact that her entire world was about to alter. The road to healing was difficult and drawn out. I went to counseling, joined widows' support groups, and slowly, oh so slowly, I began to heal. That's when I made a choice that would once again alter the path of our lives. I chose to assume control of David's cookie factory. I immersed myself into the company, studying supply chains, food laws, and cookie making as much as I could. Although it was draining, it offered me a feeling of direction that I had been missing since David's passing. One afternoon, my helper Jake said, "Miss Thompson, the new chocolate chip supplier is online too." With a sigh, I looked at the time. I hadn't seen Emma all day, and it was now past 6. After gathering my belongings, I said, "Tell them I'll call back tomorrow." Guilt stung me as I drove home. Emma was spending more and more time with her babysitter, Maria, while I was working more hours than ever before. Emma raced to me as soon as I went through the door, her face beaming. "You're home early, Mama." I sketched an image of us at the park. My heart fell. If 7 p.m. was early, I was not performing my job well. She led me to the kitchen table, where her pieces of art were laid out. The illustration included 2 stick figures, one large and one little, encircled by trees and a happy-looking sun. "It's stunning, Emma," I remarked as I looked at the image. "However, why are we apart? What happened to your pals?" Emma gave a shrug. "I'm not sure. I don't use them for much play. Can we actually visit a park one day?" Her remarks felt like a kick to the stomach. I had been so preoccupied with managing the company that I had forgotten about the most significant aspect of my life, my daughter. The ensuing several months involved delicate balance. It was difficult, but I made an effort to assign extra tasks at work so that I could leave at a decent hour. The company was expanding quickly, and there was always another meeting or choice to be made. When Emma turned 7, I promised her a lavish celebration. I was desperate to make up for lost time, so I spent weeks arranging it. When the big celebration day finally arrived, everything went smoothly. We had a unicorn-shaped cake, a magician, and a bouncy house. Emma was ecstatic. But even as I savored the occasion, a part of me was preoccupied. My phone kept beeping in my pocket with emails on possible new business and inquiries regarding the production plan for the next week. I entered the home to check my messages and briefly excused myself. Emma was bidding her pals farewell, and the magician was wrapping things up when I returned. "Mommy, did you see my card trick?" Emma approached me and inquired. I was guilty that I had missed it. I apologize, my love. I had to answer a call, but it seemed like a great time. Emma's expression briefly sank, but then she forced a grin. It's all right, perhaps next time. I sat on the side of my bed that night, holding my head in my hands, after Emma had fallen asleep. I was letting myself down, as well as David's memory and our kid. There has to be a change. I could not continue to live this way, alternating between my family and my career. However, what action might I take? The company was doing well, giving Emma the stability in her finances that I had assured David I would provide. That's when it hit me. I didn't need to choose between the business and Emma. I needed to find a way to have both. A way to honor David's legacy while still being present for our daughter. The solution came to me during a late-night brainstorming session. I needed to hire a CEO, someone who could run the day-to-day operations of the company while I maintained overall control as the owner. It wasn't an easy decision, but I knew it was necessary for both the business and my family. After an exhaustive search and countless interviews, I found the perfect candidate. Michael Stevens had years of experience in the food industry and shared my vision for the company's future. With Michael at the helm, I could finally step back and focus on what truly mattered, Emma. The following weeks were a period of adjustment for both of us. Emma was initially skeptical of my sudden availability, but gradually she began to open up. We started small, having breakfast together every morning and helping with homework in the evenings. Soon we were planning weekend outings and movie nights. Slowly but surely, I was rediscovering the joy of motherhood. One evening, as we were baking cookies together, a nod to David's legacy, Emma turned to me with flour on her nose. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Anything." She hesitated for a moment before blurting out, "Why don't you have photos of you pregnant with me?" The question caught me off guard. I'd always known this day would come, but I hadn't expected it so soon. Taking a deep breath, I decided honesty was the best policy. "Emma, sweetie, let's sit down for a moment," I said, guiding her to the kitchen table. "You were born in a special way. Dad and I wanted you so much, but I couldn't carry you in my tummy, so a very kind woman helped us. She carried you for 9 months, but you're still our daughter. You have my eyes and your dad's smile." I waited anxiously for her reaction, ready for tears or anger, but Emma simply nodded, processing the information. "So I have 2 moms?" she asked after a moment. "In a way, yes, but I'm your mom in all the ways that matter. I love you more than anything in this world." Emma thought for a moment, then shrugged. "Okay, can we finish the cookies now?" I laughed, relieved at her easy acceptance. "Of course, sweetheart." As we returned to our baking, I marveled at my daughter's resilience. She had been through so much, losing her father, dealing with an absent mother, and now learning about her origins. Yet here she was, smiling and covered in flour, taking it all in stride. As the years passed, Emma and I settled into a comfortable rhythm. Our bond grew stronger with each passing day, and I found myself rediscovering the joys of motherhood I had nearly forgotten. Emma blossomed into a vibrant, curious teenager, reminding me more and more of David with each passing day. One afternoon, as we were having our weekly mother-daughter chat over hot chocolate, Emma dropped a bombshell. "Mom, I've been thinking about my future," she said, stirring her drink pensively. I nodded encouragingly. "That's great, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" Well, she hesitated. "I've been researching careers, and I think I want to be a social media manager." I blinked, surprised. Social media marketing? That's different from what I expected. Emma's eyes lit up. "It's amazing, Mom." The way you can connect with people, build brands, create content, it's like art and business combined. I listened as she enthusiastically explained her plans, feeling a mix of pride and uncertainty. Part of me had always assumed she'd follow in my footsteps, maybe even take over the family business one day. But here she was, charting her own course. "That sounds wonderful, Emma," I said, pushing aside my reservations. "If that's what you're passionate about, I'll support you all the way." As Emma chattered on about her plans, my mind wandered to the company. Our cookie empire had grown beyond my wildest dreams under Michael's leadership, but I couldn't help wondering about its future. Who would take over when I was gone? Weeks turned into months, and Emma threw herself into learning everything she could about social media marketing. She took online courses, attended workshops, and even started managing social media accounts for some local businesses. Meanwhile, I found myself spending more time at the company again. Not because I didn't trust Michael. He was doing an excellent job, but because I felt a need to secure Emma's future, even if she didn't want to be directly involved in the business. One evening, as I was working late at the office, Emma called. "Mom, guess what?" She practically squealed through the phone. "I got an internship at a top social agency." I felt a pang of disappointment, quickly followed by guilt for feeling that way. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." After we hung up, I sat back in my chair, conflicted. I was thrilled for Emma, of course. She was following her dreams just as David and I had always wanted. But a small, selfish part of me couldn't help feeling like I was losing her to a world I didn't understand. The next morning, I called Emma to congratulate her again on her internship. Then I took a deep breath and made my pitch. "Emma, I have a proposition for you," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "How would you feel about doing some social media work for our company? Just as a side project, of course. Your internship comes first." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Really?" Emma finally said, her voice a mix of surprise and excitement. "You trust me with that?" "Of course I would," I replied, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "You're talented, and you know our brand better than anyone. Plus, it would be a great addition to your portfolio." Emma agreed enthusiastically, and we spent the next hour brainstorming ideas. As we talked, I felt a sense of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of a new chapter for us, one where we could blend our passions and work together, even if it wasn't in the way I had originally envisioned. Time flew by, and before I knew it, Emma was graduating college. I couldn't have been prouder of her achievements, but I found myself facing a familiar dilemma. Emma was eager to spread her wings and work for a cutting-edge marketing firm, while I hoped she'd consider joining our family business. "Mom, I appreciate the offer, but I want to make my own way," Emma said over dinner one evening. "I don't want to be seen as the boss's daughter." I nodded, understanding her perspective. Then an idea struck me. "What if no one knew you were my daughter?" I suggested. "You could apply like any other candidate, keep your connection a secret, and prove yourself on your own merits." And so Emma joined our company under my mother's last name, quickly proving her worth in the marketing department. Months passed, and Emma seemed to be thriving. Then one day, I received an unexpected call. Mom's voice was filled with excitement. "I've met someone. He works here at the company. He's the deputy director at head office. I really like him." My heart swelled with joy. After everything we'd been through, Emma deserved happiness. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I can't wait to meet him." However, life had other plans. My mother suddenly fell ill, and I found myself shuttling between the office and her house on the outskirts of town, trying to balance work and family once again. Despite the stress, Emma was eager for me to meet her new boyfriend. "Why don't you both come to Grandma's house?" I suggested. "We can have dinner together." The day arrived, and I welcomed Emma and her boyfriend, James, into my mother's modest home. James was indeed handsome and well-mannered, greeting me with a firm handshake and a charming smile. As we sat down to dinner, I poured wine for everyone, hoping to create a relaxed atmosphere. James took a few sips and began to open up. "Polly," he said, his eyes surveying the room, "I must say, you've done a remarkable job raising Emma, especially as a single mother." I smiled politely, noticing the hint of condescension in his tone. "Emma is quite the catch," James went on, his voice taking on a patronizing tone. "She's really won the lottery with me, if I do say so myself. I can provide her with opportunities she's never dreamed of." I glanced at Emma, seeing discomfort flicker across her face, but she remained silent. I decided to play along, not revealing that this was my mother's home, not mine. After James and Emma left, I sat Emma down for a serious conversation. "Honey," I began gently, I couldn't help but notice James's behavior tonight. "Don't you think he came across as a bit arrogant?" Emma sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I know, Mom. He can be a little full of himself sometimes, but he's really sweet when we're alone. Can't you give him another chance?" I looked into my daughter's pleading eyes, remembering my own youth and the mistakes I'd made. "All right," I conceded. "Everyone deserves a second chance, but please be careful with your heart." 6 months flew by in a whirlwind of emotions and events. I had hoped that James would prove me wrong, that he'd show himself to be worthy of Emma's love. But life, as I've learned, rarely goes according to plan. One evening, Emma called me, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Mom, I have big news. James proposed, and I said yes. We're getting married." My heart sank, but I forced enthusiasm into my voice. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Congratulations." "There's more," Emma continued, oblivious to my hesitation. "We're having dinner with James's parents this weekend. They want to meet you." I knew I couldn't refuse, of course. "I'd love to meet them." As I pulled up to James's family home that Saturday, I felt a sense of foreboding. The house was a mansion, ostentatious in its luxury. Every detail screamed of wealth, from the manicured lawns to the gleaming sports cars in the driveway. James's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Worthington, greeted me at the door. Their smiles were wide but didn't reach their eyes. "Welcome, Polly," Mrs. Worthington said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We're so pleased to finally meet you." Throughout the evening, their condescension was palpable. They spoke of Emma's future as if they were fairy godparents bestowing unimaginable riches upon a poor, deserving girl. "We're not prejudiced people," Mr. Worthington declared over dinner. "We're happy to welcome Emma into our family despite certain circumstances." I raised an eyebrow. "Circumstances?" Mrs. Worthington leaned forward, her voice lowered as if sharing a secret. "We know about Emma's origins, the surrogacy, your single motherhood, your financial situation." She glanced around, as if the modest furnishings of my mother's home had somehow followed me here. "We want you to understand," she continued, "that while we're generous people, we won't be extending financial help to you. This is about Emma's future, not yours." As the evening wore on, I decided to play along, curious to see how far they'd go. I nodded meekly, playing the part of a grateful poor relative. James, emboldened by wine and his parents' approval, began to boast about his work at our company. "The boss is such a fool," he laughed. "So trusting. If I were in charge, I could siphon off millions without anyone noticing." My blood ran cold, but I kept my face neutral. "That's my boy," Mr. Worthington chuckled. I've been doing the same at my company for years. While the owners are off on their yachts, I'm lining my pockets." He gestured around the opulent room. "You think you get all this by playing by the rules? Impossible." I sat there, nodding and smiling, my stomach turning with disgust. These were the people my daughter wanted to marry into. This was the man she thought she loved. As the evening wore on, I decided to probe a little further. Turning to Mr. Worthington, I asked innocently, "Where exactly do you work, sir? Your job sounds fascinating." Mr. Worthington puffed up with pride. "I'm the Senior Vice President of Operations at Global Tech Industries," he boasted, naming a company I knew all too well. I smiled to myself, a plan forming in my mind. "How interesting. Would anyone like some tea?" I asked. "Oh, yes, please." Mrs. Worthington nodded, rising from her seat. "Of course, allow me." She returned moments later with an ornate tea set, pouring steaming fragrant tea into delicate china cups for her family and Emma. Then she turned to me with a smirk, placing a plastic cup and a cheap tea bag before me. "I assume this is more familiar to you," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Best not to get ideas above your station." As the others sipped their tea and nibbled on exquisite pastries, Mrs. Worthington pointedly avoided offering me any dessert. "I'm sure you understand," she simpered. "Beggars can't be choosers after all." I saw Emma's face contorted with anger and hurt. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Mom, I think we should leave. I won't sit here and watch you be disrespected like this." I nodded, rising to my feet. "You're right, dear. But before we go, there's something I need to do." I pulled out my phone and dialed a number, putting it on speaker. "Hello, Richard. It's Polly Thompson." "Polly, what a pleasant surprise. How can I help you?" A jovial voice answered. "I'm sitting here with Mr. Worthington, who claims to be your Senior VP of Operations. Could you confirm that for me?" "Of course. Polly, Thomas Worthington's been with us for 15 years. Is everything all right?" I took a deep breath. Not exactly. "Richard, I'm afraid I've just overheard Mr. Worthington bragging about embezzling funds from your company." The room fell silent. Mr. Worthington's face was drained of color. Richard's voice turned cold. "Is that so? Well, Thomas, consider yourself fired. Expect a full investigation and legal action to follow." As I ended the call, I turned to James. "As for you, James, you're also terminated from your position at Thompson Cookies, effective immediately. Thank you for highlighting the need for stricter background checks and oversight in our hiring process." The Worthingtons stared at me, slack-jawed. Mrs. Worthington found her voice first. "Tell you what is the meaning of this. Who are you?" I stood tall, my voice firm. "I am Polly Thompson, CEO and owner of Thompson Cookies, the company your son works for, or rather, used to work for. I took over after my late husband's death and grew it into the success it is today. I stepped back to focus on raising my daughter, but I never stopped being involved." The change in their demeanor was instant and nauseating. Mr. Worthington and James fell to their knees, pleading for forgiveness, their earlier arrogance replaced by pathetic grins. Emma and I exchanged a look of disgust. Without another word, we turned and walked out of the house, leaving behind the sounds of desperate apologies and recriminations. The weeks following that fateful dinner were a whirlwind of activity. I ordered a comprehensive audit of all our financial records, focusing particularly on James's department. As I suspected, the results were damning. James had been siphoning off funds for months, cleverly disguising his theft as legitimate business expenses. I didn't take long to bring fraud and embezzlement cases against James. Despite the fact that the evidence was stacked against him, we won the fierce court struggle. I was delighted to hear the judge's decision. The defendant is ordered to repay all stolen funds with interest and pay Thompson Cookies punitive damages. Moreover, he will not be permitted to occupy any senior management posts going forward. Emma let out a big sigh as we exited the courthouse. It's finished. It truly is over. I felt a burden go off my shoulders as I nodded. Indeed, it is. We are currently rebuilding. Emma and I devoted the following few months to revitalizing the business. At last, I resumed my role as CEO, and Emma came on board to lead our recently enlarged marketing division. We increased our sales and market share in less than a year. The reputation of Thompson Cookies was greater than before. Emma's phone buzzed one evening as we were coming to the end of a very productive day. As she read the message, a grin sprang on her face. "Is everything all right?" Acknowledging that specific grin, I inquired. Emma nodded, her cheeks blushing just a little. "This is Alex. He's asking if I'd like to go out to dinner this evening." Ah, Alex. A few months prior, Emma had met him at a business conference. From what I'd observed, he was the proprietor of a little but rapidly expanding organic bakery, and in contrast to James, he seemed to be nice, sincere, and really supportive of Emma's goals. "You ought to leave," I urged her. "You've been putting in too much effort lately. Enjoy yourself." Emma paused. "Are you certain?" Tonight, we were scheduled to review the quarterly reports. I dismissed her with a wave. "The reports are not urgent. Enjoy your evening as you go." Emma was gathering items, and while she did, I couldn't help but feel hopeful. Emma was satisfied with Alex. He was a good man. I felt a wave of satisfaction come over me as I watched her go. I could be organizing a genuine wedding once more in the near future. A period of love and truth. After that, I wouldn't turn down 1 or 2 grandchildren. I'm Mia, and I would like to tell you a tale. I used to be a cosmetologist at a posh clinic downtown. I'm 35. It was terrific work. I got to make others feel good about themselves, and I got paid well. However, my ultimate goal has always been to establish my own company. Let me now introduce you to the second character in this narrative, my husband, who is currently our ex-husband, but more on that later. Identify him as Adam. Adam, who is 4 years my senior, was formerly a manager at a large construction business. We moved into my apartment after 5 years of marriage. Adam would add, sipping a drink on the couch, "Baby, opening your own place is the way to go. You decide your own hours and be in charge." Is that the dream, correct? I would nod, internally delighted. Yes, you're correct, but getting there will require a significant amount of work and money. I would respond. Adam would dismiss it with a casual sweep of his hand. "We'll work things out, so don't worry about that. I'll help us out while you get things going. You just concentrate on running a fantastic business." I therefore began to save. I immediately put every additional dime I had into my company fund. Nothing new to wear, no special dinners, nothing at all. I had a goal in mind. When I declined to order takeaway for the 4th time in a week, Adam would say, "Geez, Mia, you don't have to be so strict." Warming up leftovers, I would tell him, "Every dollar counts, Adam. Remember, we agreed on this?" He would complain, then nod. "Indeed, you are correct." Ultimately, it will be worthwhile. I should definitely point out that Adam had previously been married. After their divorce, he informed me he left his flat to his ex-wife. All I knew was that they had been together for 6 years. He would go silent if I tried to ask additional questions. After several months, I felt prepared to take the risk. I resigned from the clinic, obtained my license, located the ideal small place, and began remodeling. Making decisions on what equipment to purchase and how to decorate took up every day. I was finally ready to open after what felt like an eternity. For 2 weeks, I worked nonstop for 14 days, from early in the morning till late at night. In those first 2 weeks, I didn't see Adam very much. He was fast sleeping when I arrived home. He was still snoring when I got up in the morning. Then one day my phone began to vibrate uncontrollably as I was giving myself a facial. I ignored it at first because, well, I'm a professional, but as the phone kept buzzing, I became concerned. What if Adam had suffered a setback? I checked my phone as soon as my customer walked out. 10 calls went unanswered from Amy, my mother-in-law. My stomach fell out. Amy never phoned unless there was a significant issue. With a beating heart, I phoned her back. "Amy, how are things going?" With a trembling voice, she murmured, "Mia, thank goodness." Adam and I had been attempting to communicate all day. He's involved in some sort of controversy at work, and I'm having trouble reaching him. I'm quite concerned. I felt as though someone had thrown me a pail of cold water. Scandal? Which scandal? Adam had mentioned nothing about it. Therefore, I knew nothing about it. "Amy, I'm not aware of any scandals," I remarked. On the other end of the telephone, there was a prolonged silence. "Oh," was her final response. "I understand. So if you have a chance, please ask him to give me a call." I remained up late that night waiting for Adam. When he did, at midnight, he smelled like beer. I tried not to panic and said, "Where have you been?" "Your mother has been reaching out to you all day long. She made a comment on a scandal at work." Adam exhaled deeply after freezing for a while. He did not glance at me as he collapsed into the couch. He murmured, "I guess I should have told you sooner. About a month ago, I left my job. I had the impression of being hit in the belly." "A month? You have been out of work for a month, and you neglected to inform me? What took place?" With resentment in his voice, Adam stated, "I got into a fight with my boss." I was at my breaking point because he was acting like such a jerk. My pride prevented me from staying. I inhaled deeply as I attempted to interpret his words. Even though I was working nonstop, Adam had been at home during this entire period. I questioned, "Why didn't you look for another job?" Adam gave me a guilty expression as he stared at me. "Mia, I believe I'm exhausted. I must take a rest. Perhaps I ought to consult a psychologist or something. I simply can't take on a new job at this time." I wanted to yell at him in part. We had an arrangement. His job was to help us while I launched my company. I wanted to scream, but I refrained after seeing how defeated he looked sitting there. After a lengthy silence, I responded, "Okay. We'll work this out, Adam, but no more secrets. Remember that we are a team." With a look of relief on his face, he nodded. "Mia, I apologize. I swear there won't be any more secrets." I had no idea that would be the first of many promises he would breach. The ensuing weeks were difficult. I began taking on more shifts at my previous clinic, spending the afternoons there and the mornings at my own practice. It was tiresome, but there was nothing more I could do. In addition to bills, I still owed money on an office loan. Adam spent most of his time at home, supposedly looking for jobs online, but mostly playing video games. I tried to be supportive, reminding myself that mental health is important, but as the weeks turned into months, I started to wonder if he was even trying at all. Then finally, a glimmer of hope. One day, Adam came home grinning from ear to ear. "I got a job," he announced. I was so relieved I could have cried. That night, we celebrated with a bottle of wine, toasting to new beginnings. For a moment, it felt like everything was going to be okay. But Adam's new job only lasted a month. One day, I came home from a long shift to find him sprawled on the couch, beer in hand, staring blankly at the TV. "You're home early," I said, feeling a sinking sensation in my stomach. He shrugged, still watching the screen. "I quit." It felt like a punch to the gut. "What? Why?" Adam muttered. The boss was a jerk. Wanted me to be a robot, all about discipline and following orders. Screw that. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Adam, we talked about this. We can't afford for you to keep quitting jobs." He finally looked at me, his eyes cold. "So I'm supposed to be miserable. I thought you'd be more understanding, Mia." I bit my tongue, not wanting to start a fight, but inside I was boiling. Understanding. I was working myself to the bone while he sat around drinking beer and playing video games. The next 8 months were a blur of work stress and mounting frustration. I'd come home to find Adam exactly where I'd left him, surrounded by empty beer cans and takeout containers. "Any luck with the job search?" I'd ask, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "Nothing good out there," he'd reply, waving his hand like it didn't matter. "I'm looking for something interesting, with good pay but not too demanding." I wanted to scream, who didn't want a job like that? But those jobs don't just fall into your lap. You have to work for them. Then one night, after a long day, I came home to find Adam actually up and about. He had this strange, excited look in his eyes. "Mia, I've been thinking," he said, pulling me down onto the couch. "We should have a baby." I stared at him, sure I'd misheard. "What?" "Yeah, think about it," he said, grinning. "I could be a stay-at-home dad. You go to work, and I take care of the baby. It's perfect." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Adam, you've never even washed a dish in this apartment. How are you going to take care of a baby?" His face fell. "What, you don't think I could do it?" "It's not that," I said, trying to be gentle. "It's just that taking care of a baby is a lot of work, and we're not exactly in a good financial spot right now." "You're being cruel," he said in a low voice. "You don't understand my problems." I let out a bitter laugh. "Your problems, Adam. I'm working 14 days, 2 weeks. I'm exhausted, and do you want to add a baby to all this?" He stormed off, slamming the bedroom door behind him. I sat on the couch with my head in my hands, wondering how we had gotten to this point. It all started with the video games. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone needs a hobby, right? But then I noticed our joint bank account was losing money fast. "Adam," I said one evening, trying to stay calm, "did you buy another game? Did you upgrade your computer?" He didn't even look away from the screen. "Yeah, so what? It's our money, isn't it?" I took a deep breath. "We're supposed to be saving, remember? For our future." He paused the game and turned to me, acting all innocent. "Babe, it's an investment in my leisure time, Don't worry, I'll pay it all back when I get a job." That was the last straw. The next day, I closed our joint account and stopped giving Adam any more money. If he wanted to act like a child, fine, but I wasn't going to be his personal ATM anymore. I thought that would solve things. Boy, was I wrong. The fight started almost right away. Adam would stomp around the apartment, slamming doors and muttering under his breath. "You don't respect me." He'd yell, "You're trying to control me." I tried to stay calm. "Adam, I'm just trying to keep us afloat. We can't keep spending money we don't have." He stormed off again, leaving me standing in the kitchen, wondering how we ended up like this. Days went by, and Adam didn't lift a finger around the apartment. Dishes piled up in the sink, laundry overflowed from the hamper, and takeout containers were scattered everywhere. I was working myself to the bone, and he couldn't even be bothered to vacuum. Then came the day that changed everything. I got home early from work, my head pounding with a migraine. As I approached our apartment door, I heard Adam's voice coming through the open window. "Yeah, Mom. I need a new suit for this great new job." He was saying, "Could you lend me some money? I'll pay you back as soon as I get my first paycheck." I froze my hand on the door. What new job? I burst into the apartment, startling Adam so much he dropped his phone. "What new job, Adam?" I demanded. He stammered, trying to come up with a lie, but I had caught him red-handed. "You were going to take money from your parents for a job that doesn't even exist." I was shaking with anger. "I was going to tell you," he mumbled. "Tell me what?" "That you're a liar. That you'd rather take money from your parents than get up and find a real job." What followed was a huge fight. We yelled, we cried, and said things we couldn't take back. In the end, Adam grabbed a bag and stormed out, saying he was going to stay with his parents for a while. As the door slammed behind him, I sank to the floor, my head in my hands. I had my own business. I was driven. I was successful. Yet here I was, married to a man who seemed determined to drag us both down. The days after Adam left were strange. I kept expecting him to come back full of apologies and promises to do better. But as one day turned into one, then two, and then a week, there was nothing. No calls, no texts, not even a lousy email. Part of me was relieved. The apartment was peaceful. No more walking on eggshells. No more cleaning up after a grown man who acted like a teenager. But another part of me was worried. What if something had happened to him? Just when I was thinking about calling his parents, my phone rang. Adam's name flashed on the screen. I answered, my heart pounding. "Adam, where are you? Are you okay?" His voice was cheerful. "Hey, babe, guess where I am? Miami. Can you believe it? Mom always wanted to come here, so we decided to make it a family trip. It's amazing. It felt like a punch to the gut." Well, I had been here worrying about him. "What do you mean, we decided?" I asked, my voice tight. "When did you decide this?" "Oh, you know, it was kind of a last-minute thing," he said, sounding casual. "I told Mom and Dad about my great new job offer, and we thought, why not celebrate?" I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "What job offer, Adam? We both know there isn't one." There was a pause, then Adam's voice came back quieter this time. "Look, what they don't know won't hurt them, right? We're having a great time. I'll find a job when we get back, I promise." "And how exactly are you paying for all this?" I asked, fearing the answer. "Oh, don't worry about that," he said, his voice brightening again. I borrowed a couple of your credit cards. But don't freak out. I'll bring you back a magnet or something, okay? Have a great weekend." And then he hung up. Just like that, I stood there staring at my phone, feeling like my entire world was falling apart. The man I had married had stolen my credit cards to fund a vacation based on a lie. Something inside me snapped. I was done. No more second chances. No more excuses. With shaking hands, I opened my banking app and blocked every one of my cards. Then I called a locksmith. "I need my locks changed," I said, my voice steady. "As soon as possible." The locksmith came and went, and I was left alone in an apartment that suddenly felt too big, too empty. But I wasn't finished yet. I grabbed my phone and made one more call, to a divorce lawyer. Later that day, as I sat in the lawyer's office, I felt a strange mix of emotions: sadness, anger, fear, but also relief. Signing those divorce papers was the first step in taking back control of my life. That evening, I was settling in for a quiet night at home, the first in what felt like forever, when my phone started buzzing. Adam's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. Mia, thank God you picked up. Adam's voice was frantic. Something's wrong with the cards. They're not working. We can't pay for anything. I could hear the panic in his voice, but I felt surprisingly calm. That's because I blocked them, Adam. There was stunned silence on the other end. Then you what? Why would you do that? Because they're my cards, Adam. I didn't give you permission to use them. But we're stranded here. Mom and Dad are freaking out. You have to unblock them. I could hear the desperation, but I stayed firm. No, I don't have to do anything. You got yourself into this mess. You can get yourself out. That's when he lost it. Are you kidding me? You're putting me in an impossible situation here. You're my wife. You're supposed to help me. Unblock the cards right now, or I swear to God I'll divorce you. I burst out laughing, a deep, uncontrollable laugh that seemed to come from a part of me that had been locked away for too long. Oh, Adam, I said once I could speak again, you're a little late with that threat. Then I hung up. The next day, I rented a storage unit and packed up all of Adam's things. Every shirt, every game console, every little thing that reminded me of him. It all went into boxes and then into storage. I knew he would come home soon, probably expecting to walk right back into our apartment like nothing had happened. Well, he was in for a surprise. Sure enough, a few days later, my phone rang. Adam's voice was a mix of confusion and anger. Mia, what the hell? I can't get into the apartment. Did you change the locks? Yes, I did, I said calmly. Your things are in a storage unit. I'll text you the address and unit number. My things? What are you talking about? Let me in. Mia, this isn't funny. I took a deep breath. This was it. I'm not joking, Adam. I filed for divorce. The papers should arrive at your parents' house any day now. There was a long silence. Divorce? Mia, come on. You can't be serious. We can work this out. Let's start over. Okay, I'll do better. I promise. It's over, Adam, I said firmly. I've made my decision. Please don't contact me again except through my lawyer. I hung up and blocked his number. As I sat there in my quiet apartment, I felt a mix of emotions. Sadness for what could have been, anger at all the lies and betrayal, but mostly I felt relief. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. A few days after blocking Adam's number, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, thinking it might be Adam trying to reach me from a different phone, but something made me pick up. Hello, I said cautiously. Mia, it's Amy, Adam's mother. My stomach tightened. Here it comes, I thought, the lecture about ruining their family vacation, about being a terrible wife, about not standing by Adam. Amy, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I'm sorry about what happened in Miami. She cut me off. No, Mia, I'm the one who should apologize. I'm so disappointed in Adam. I thought he had changed. What do you mean? I asked, curious. There was a long sigh on the other end of the line. Mia, there's something you should know. Adam's first marriage didn't end because they grew apart like he told you. His ex-wife left him because of his irresponsibility, his lying, his inability to keep a job, and his stealing. I felt like I had been hit with a wave of cold water. It felt like I had been punched in the gut. He never told me. I know, Amy said softly. We hoped that living with you, seeing how hardworking and responsible you are, would inspire him to change, to grow up. Her voice trailed off, and I could hear the pain in it. I felt a wave of sympathy for her. She had been fooled just like I had. "Amy, I'm so sorry." I said I had no idea. "No, Mia," she said, her voice firm. "I'm sorry we didn't tell you the full truth from the start. I'm sorry we let you go through this, and I'm more sorry than I can express for what Adam has put you through." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. "I want you to know," Amy continued, "that when we found out the truth, how he had been lying to you for months, how he stole your credit cards, and how he deceived us about having a job, we kicked him out. He's not welcome in our home right now." I was speechless. I had been so worried about being judged by Adam's family, and here they were standing by me instead. "I don't blame you for divorcing him, Mia," Amy said. "You deserve so much better. I just hope you don't think badly of all of us because of Adam's actions." "No, of course not," I said quickly. "Amy, I never blamed you or your husband. You've both always been kind to me." We talked for a while longer, with Amy filling me in on some of the details I had missed. By the time we hung up, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't alone in this. I wasn't wrong for feeling betrayed and angry. In the weeks that followed my conversation with Amy, life started to settle into a new rhythm. I threw myself into my work, finding comfort in the familiar routines of my cosmetology office. Without Adam's constant drama and financial strain, I had more energy, more focus, and surprisingly more money. But Adam wasn't going to let go easily. One evening, as I was locking up the office, I saw a familiar figure leaning against my car. My heart sank. "Mia." Adam called out as I approached. "Can we talk, please? I've changed, I swear. I'm looking for a job, a real one this time. I'll pay you back every cent. Just give me another chance." I briefly had a tinge of something, either nostalgia or perhaps pity. But then I recalled all the suffering and worry he had caused me, along with all the lies and broken promises. "No," I firmly said. "Adam, I'm done giving you opportunities. Kindly depart." I brushed him aside and climbed into my car, trembling as I turned on the ignition. He was standing there, appearing lost, in my rearview mirror as I was leaving. However, I didn't go back. I didn't get to see Adam in person again after that. He attempted to contact a couple more times that last time, but I blocked each attempt. After some time, the divorce was settled amicably. Furthermore, what do you know? Without the ongoing worry over Adam's unemployment and expenses, life got a lot better. Things got a lot better financially. I was able to devote my entire being to my cosmetology practice, and it was fruitful. My clientele increased as word got out, and before long, I was fully booked. I made the decision to leave my clinic part-time work and devote all of my attention to my own company. Although it was unsettling at first, it ended up being the finest choice I could have done. With more time and energy to spare, I concentrated on growing my clientele and marketing. To help with the burden, I went so far as to recruit 2 extra cosmetologists. All of a sudden, I was more than simply a cosmetologist. I was in charge. I paid off the debt I had taken out to launch the company early. I felt financially comfortable for the first time in years, and the incessant anxiety about money had vanished. However, it went beyond money. I began rewarding myself with small pleasures, such as weekend getaways, elegant dinners, and the shoes I had been eyeing for months. I used to always tell myself that we had to save every dollar for an unrealized future. Therefore, I never did these things. Looking at the blueprints for a new treatment room from my enlarged office, I can't help but be astounded by how much has changed. I've gone from merely existing to flourishing, and I accomplished it all by myself. Please understand that it wasn't always simple. There were times when I want to return home and celebrate my accomplishments with a companion. But when I established a life I genuinely valued, those times dwindled. In retrospect, I see that divorcing Adam wasn't the conclusion of my journey. Rather, it was only the beginning. I made my decisions about my future, my goals, and myself at that same instant. Furthermore, what do you know? In a heartbeat, I would choose to do it over again.